Driving dish, George's driving dish.
Welcome back, everyone, to the Drive and Dish podcast. I'm Georges Niang, and the woman that I am about to introduce needs no introduction. She is called the GOAT, the greatest of all time, Doris Burke. Thank you for joining us on the Drive and Dish podcast.
So nice to be with you, George. I miss NBA basketball, so if I can't watch you guys play, it's delightful to talk to you. I did a little interview with Steph for a junior leadership conference this morning, so it's nice to see you.
No surprise here, Doris. You are just always staying busy, no matter if you're in the house, out the house. The only thing that's changing is you're not taking flights and traveling country or state to state.
This is true. My children make fun of me because on the rare times where I have, a month or two off after the season, they think I manufacture stuff to do, whether it's, yard work or a picture project. They laugh at my inability to stay still. I have to say it's probably been as strange for you because I do think there's a rhythm to the NBA calendar. It's strange for all of us across the world. And I don't know about you. I'd be curious to know, George, do you have good days, bad days? What's it been like for you?
Oh, the good days are a little higher than the bad days. But, let me tell you, to start off, it was really tough. I told someone the other day, and I don't know if you feel the same way, basketball is a lot of our lives. We have other things that keep us happy, but basketball is something that keeps all of us happy. And, when that was taken away, that was really tough. And, you kind of transition to, okay, now I can, live my life, but you couldn't do that. So you almost felt like trapped in your own life. I was thinking to myself, how do I just get away from this? But you can't. Because basketball was taken away and, with being quarantined and having to, respect the orders of the government and, what we had to do to keep everybody safe, that was really, really tough for me. And I don't know if that was as tough for you because you're always finding things to do. But that was the one tough part for me.
Yeah, it's challenging. I mean, the first couple of weeks, to be honest with you, because I tested positive for COVID-19, I was down and out for a good 2 weeks. I was not leaving my apartment outside Philadelphia. My daughter and her fiance were with me, and they were caring for me. And then the next couple of weeks, once I started to heal and get better, George, the only emotion I literally could feel was gratitude. Because at that point, we're 3 weeks into it and we're understanding how serious and dangerous this is. I literally was so thankful. And then the other thought was, oh dear God, please don't let Sarah and John get it. Please don't let my son Matthew, who lives in Rhode Island, get it. And so it's. I think my experience has been maybe just slightly different if you've had it versus not, because you're so thankful that you've come through it. But now, as time has worn on, my daughter was joking with me because I'm like, oh, I'm handling this so well. You see, someday I can retire. I can sit and do nothing. And she's like, you're irritable, you're cranky, you missed the game, and you need to go back to work. I'm like, well, maybe I'm not doing as well as I thought.
Oh, I'm sure we all feel that way. I'm lucky enough that, I don't have any responsibilities. You're a parent and, a mother. I'm just a one-man band over here. I only have to take care of myself. Let's go back to March 11th.
Yes.
Utah Jazz, along with me, were in Oklahoma City. As we were getting ready to warm up, there was obviously a situation where that had to be addressed. Rudy Gobert had tested positive for the coronavirus. Meanwhile, other games are getting ready to go on, and you are down in Dallas doing the Denver Nugget Dallas Mavericks game. Tell me the thoughts that were going through your mind. One, when you're on air and the season gets postponed or canceled, whatever the first wave was, when Adam Silver sent that out. And how do you continue to, one, do your job, and then think, what is next for basketball? What is next for you? What is next for our country?
Yeah, that was such a fascinating day. And I'm going to throw something back at you when I finish my thought, because I remember distinctly being at the arena in Dallas prior to the game and asking a couple of the guys and then a couple of staff members from each team, how much conversation is happening amongst the players about this? Is there fear? or their concerns. So that was one thing. The advantage I had going into the game was at lunch that day, as an announced team, which we do every game day, we'll meet for lunch and discuss, all right, what are the stories that need to be hit? Who are we interviewing tonight? Where do we want to go with those? And I know at lunch we were talking about doing a Western Conference preview, focusing on that 8th and 9th and 10th position teams because it's been so competitive. I said, guys, we can't go there. I mean, San Francisco just announced, they're going to play their next game, the Golden State Warriors, without fans. We have to discuss this. I know it's outside of our broadcast, but it's what's happening in the world. And so, but I will say this, so we do that, we carry out our plan, and then all of a sudden I open Twitter in the course of my first half, and I see things breaking about Rudy testing positive. And now I'm hitting my talkback button, which goes directly to the truck. It does not go out over air. And I'm saying, guys, I think Rudy is tested positive. I think that game's going to get canceled. It was surreal because once we confirmed the information, George, the game we were calling felt trivial. And I don't know if I speculated on air, but I said, what are we continuing for?
I think it goes along with, kind of any, I don't want to say pandemic or disease, because a bunch of us had been around for the talk of like Ebola and SARS, and that never reached us. It never really touched us. So I would say, we were pretty precautious about it. Not too precautious, but Quinn Snyder, our coach, had told us, hey, this is serious. And we were in New York, I think maybe a week before, and there had been the first case that was in New York. So they were telling us, hey, we're playing in Madison Square Garden tonight. Don't high five any fans. Please refrain from doing autographs after games, be careful, only go and see your family. But I think you can attest to this, Doris. You don't really know how serious it is till it affects you personally.
Well, so when I returned home on the 12th, and we knew the season was postponed at the very least, I still didn't know I had it. And in fact, I did not get tested for another 5 days after that. And the only reason, so I hadn't been feeling well, but at the time, George, my symptoms, which were extreme fatigue and searing headaches, those were not the symptoms most closely aligned with the virus. I had none of the pressure on my chest, the shortness of breath, the high fever, none of those symptoms. And in fact, the only reason I decided to get tested is I wasn't improving. So it wasn't the flu, and I was going well past a week, and I thought, boy, this isn't right. And my daughter and her fiance, they're both attorneys, and they left downtown Philadelphia because they were living in a 26th floor high rise and thought in a 600 square foot flat. So they said, Mom, do you mind if we come out? I'm like, I would love the company. I don't feel well, but I'll just keep my distance from you two. So literally 5 days later, I get tested because at that time there was a delay in the labs. It took 8 days to get my result. So these two were exposed to me, albeit I had been up in my room by myself, and my daughter was really the only one who was having contact with me, trying to get me to eat something, drink something, whatever. I think having somebody at least in my living space made it better. My daughter caring for me made it a lot better, and I could hear them, and then once I tested positive, you shut down any contact whatsoever. I tried to minimize whatever she had to bring me. Make sure she was taking all necessary precautions. But I'm going to say this to you. If you're alone in your apartment and you have nobody else, I can't imagine how difficult that is, truly, because 2 weeks is a brutally long time.
Yeah, I mean, that's an issue we have, Doris. You're so loved. So many people want to be around you, but then something like this comes along and you kind of have to remember wow, this, was pretty serious, and I kind of have to watch, who I'm coming in contact with, who I have been in contact with. It's almost like you wish you were an introvert, so it could be like, listen, I know what I can handle, and I can do this on my own and with the help of my family, but I don't want to affect other people. And you've done a great job of you're not only a pioneer in your field with, what you've done, but a pioneer with this COVID-19 virus. Talk about what you've done to be progressive in trying to help, our government, our health department, find ways to figure out how they can better this and make this a better situation for our country.
Well, I have to be honest with you. The first person who put the thought into my head was my partner, Ryan Rucco, who, as soon as I landed home and from that day forward, he had been checking on me. Are you feeling better? What's going on? Do you need to go to the hospital? And once I contracted it, Ryan was the very first person to put into my head, you might be able to help people. And I wasn't sure whether I wanted to go public with the positive test, right? It's a very personal thing. So Ryan and my daughter were the two who said, Mom, your symptoms weren't what everybody else was experiencing. I think you should share this information. And I'm not huge on social media. Unless I'm congratulating my Providence College Friars in some way, I don't post a ton. But I eventually decided to do the Woj pod and tell people I had tested positive, primarily because I wanted to share, hey, it's not only shortness of breath, there's just extreme fatigue. My fever never went above 100. So that was one reason. And then the plasma thing, there's an organization, ccpp19.org. But really, anyone who knows they've had the virus or eventually gets tested and finds they've had it with the antibodies, I would encourage you, if you're willing, to go to your local blood bank, because there is something called convalescent plasma. So once you've had it, you have antibodies, and they can directly inject those antibodies via your plasma to people who are fighting the disease, or perhaps down the line, maybe even somebody who doesn't have the antibodies. Like, we're in this together. And so it's taken some time here in Rhode Island. I came up to my home in Rhode Island once I was well enough. There's a lot more space. And frankly, as much as I love my daughter and her fiance, I don't want to be with a young couple. I should be on my own.
You kicked them out.
I came to my home in Rhode Island. So on the 29th of this month, I will go into the Rhode Island blood bank and give plasma, and hopefully it helps somebody. I mean, I'm a little afraid, but I'm going to do it nonetheless.
That is awesome. And, that's what we need in this country right now. People stepping up and trying to help each other and make this a better situation for us all, because like I miss work, I know you miss work. So let's hurry and get everybody healthy and get back to work. And let's put a wrap on this coronavirus talk. Can we talk about like brighter things? Are you ready to talk about happier things, Doris, or what?
Definitely.
Okay, good. Well, we'll take it back to your Providence Friar days, since you're bringing that up. I am a Massachusetts kid, so I was all about the BC, Providence, all those schools growing up. And you had a successful career playing guard at Providence. What made you want to step into this field as an analyst, as a broadcaster? What really interests you? Because I know, as being a basketball player, you never want to leave the game, but what I found out with this podcast, it's a little more work than we actually think it is.
Well, what's sort of funny is, like, if you could have seen me at Providence College, George, the last thing you would have thought is she's going to go into TV, because I had bad hair, bad clothes, bad skin, bad teeth, zero sense of fashion. It is no wonder my dating life was not spectacular at Providence College. I only cared about whether my jump shot could ever match my dribble drive ability. But it's funny, I left Providence, worked at a private school for emotionally disturbed kids for a year. Then I go back to my alma mater. I'm an assistant coach for 2 years, and while I'm there, I get engaged. And I know I want to start a family pretty soon after, and I did not think I could be a great coach and a great mom. So I leave coaching, which I miss to this very day. But the year I left, they put Providence College women's basketball on local radio. And that was my first entree into the business. I think I was pretty good. I had no formal training, right? Syracuse, Missouri, they have great, communication school. But I got so lucky in that I entered the field at a time where coverage of women's basketball was exploding. And literally over the course of the last 30 years, little by little by little, you just keep grinding and building and learning more and more. I had incredible instruction, a million breaks along the way. The formation of the WNBA in 1997 afforded me an opportunity to work in New York City, to work at Madison Square Garden at the time, they were the very vanguard of regional sports cable networks. They were so far ahead of everybody else. I'm so indebted to people like Mike Breen and people I came into contact with there. So it's been a long, slow journey. In a million years, I was a very shy kid. The only place I had confidence was in between the lines of a basketball court. And I'm not overstating, I literally only cared about basketball as a young person. So I fell into this business by divine providence. Little by little, you grow and get better. And now I call NBA games for a living. Like, you have to just, sometimes I'll be sitting at the NBA finals. Mark, Jeff, and Mike are doing their thing. And I'm looking around going, holy shit. I'm at the NBA finals. Like, I cannot believe that sometimes. I hope I can curse on your podcast. I'm sorry.
Yes, no, we love the enthusiasm. We love the realness. That's why we love you. And I just think about it, as a kid from Massachusetts, I told you this, off air. I remember hearing your voice. I wasn't born when you were doing, the women's side of it, but I remember you doing men's Big East games. You were like one of the first females in a male-dominated industry to really tap in and, demand respect from your peers and be really good at what you're doing. Just talk about you being a pioneer and some of the struggles. And I get why people call you the GOAT, because you were like the first woman to not only, do it, but do it at a high level that represented women at such a high level and made people respect women in this industry.
Yeah, as you can imagine, that's been a little bit of a process, right? Because, and I say this all the time, it's men of your generation, maybe a little bit older than you, and then moving down to future generations where they're accustomed to my voice, George. I'm in that NBA 2K game. You've all grown up with me in that particular spot. That wasn't always the case, I appreciate how kind you've been, and that I hope most people are okay with me being there and enjoy the commentary. But there was a good 10 or 15 year stretch where that was not the sentiment. They either didn't comprehend or didn't enjoy that a woman was calling men's college basketball, particularly for a level like the Big East, and then moving on to the NBA. And there was a part of me, as I was going through that understood a piece of it, because think about the times in your life where you've heard something out of the ordinary or experienced something out of the ordinary. Our first inclination as human beings is to sort of recoil and go, well, what, just as you said, well, what is that? Why am I hearing that? So to a certain extent, I heard it. And, it's been, again, a long process. And the one thing I've always appreciated, and the one thing throughout this entire journey for me that has been my soft landing spot, and I say it all the time, the players and the coaches have been my soft landing spot. Going back to the Mike Krzyzewskis, the Jim Calhouns, Rick Carlisle, Steve Kerr, even all the NBA players. And I said this in a speech I had to give once, that I don't think they understood that the small moments of sort of validation. Rick Carlisle one time, I was the analyst on the game, and Rick has a certain aura about him, and we finished the coaches meeting pregame, and he turns to walk out, and he turns around and he puts his hands on my shoulders, and he said, and this is early in my career, and he puts his hands on my shoulders. He says, "You're doing a good job. Keep it up." Another time, Greg Popovich, another pregame coaches meeting, and I'm the analyst. And again, I'm not the full-time analyst as I became after Doug Collins went back to the Chicago Bulls. But Pop, in a very casual moment, said something along the lines of, "Doris, you're a basketball person. Get this." Like the feeling I had, I wanted to rejoice, and I'm trying to keep my composure in that office. Like, holy shit, did he really just say that to me? So it's been the players and the coaches that have been my soft landing spot, because going all the way back to my earliest days, as soon as the game became the conversation, my gender went out the window.
Yes, and a lot of that comes from you building that relationship. I mean, gosh, I sit and I watch Greg Popovich do his interviews. For him to give you a compliment God, that would make my life. Doris, you've had a lot of moments in your life, a lot of high moments, I'm sure, a lot of low moments. Is there a major event, that altered the trajectory of your career that you can remember?
Well, I'll tell you a hard moment that I think inevitably helped me to be better at what I do. This was early in my career as an analyst on Big East men's basketball games, and would have been basically ESPNU, what is now ESPNU. It used to be called ESPN Regional. And I had a St. John's men's basketball game. And to be honest with you, I'm blanking on the player, but he was a freshman. So he was 17, 18 years of age, maybe 19, but he was very young. And it was early in the Big East season, and I was the analyst on the game. But at that level, you wouldn't necessarily have a reporter as well. And so the analyst had to get up from the table at the end of the game and interview. And George, this young man was, nervous because it's his first television interview. And I was not a very skilled interviewer. And to be honest, I put this 18-year-old kid in a very bad position because I never asked a question. I threw out a supposition. I did not give this young man an out. And he really struggled to come up with something. And I remember leaving that interview and thinking, I will never put another young person in that position again. Because by not asking a question that he could formulate an answer to, instead I threw out a supposition and tried to make this young man who sees that red light of the camera go on. He's just played a game. He's trying to slow his mind down. He's trying to put together coherent thoughts at that age. All of that was more than this young man could handle. And I just remember thinking, I will never do that again.
That's great that you have that memory. And I think it's even more important that you're putting the player above yourself, which is the reason why you are who you are and the relationship that you have and developed. Now, tell me about the highest of high moments. Give me like the top 3 most memorable moments of your career where you sit back, like you talked about in the finals, like, oh my God, I'm at the finals, or, just moments that you really cherish, as a person and then as a person in your profession.
So the first WNBA game that was played was the New York Liberty at the Los Angeles Sparks. And there was an awful lot of fanfare in 1997 about that. And as somebody who played women's college basketball and coached it, and whose career really, every part of my career began covering women's basketball. And so I'm indebted to that game. And I wanted the TV job for the Liberty that first year. I ended up not getting it. I ended up getting the radio games. So I fly out to Los Angeles, and I'm sitting courtside, and there's a lot of pomp and circumstance. Lisa Leslie's jumping for the Sparks. Rebecca Lobo's jumping for the New York Liberty. And there's a ceremonial toss at half court. Val Ackerman was then the president of the WNBA. Gus Johnson, obviously a great announcer in his own right, obviously a voice most people will recognize. He's my partner on the Liberty Radio. I'm supposed to be broadcasting the game, and I am so overcome with emotion in the old forum where I watched the Lakers and Magic Johnson do their thing all those years. I'm sitting there and I'm absolutely overwhelmed, and it's all I can do to choke back tears and try to form a coherent sentence. This is the first game I'm working with Gus Johnson, and he's looking at me like, oh my God. So that's one moment I will always cherish, that the opportunity to have been there at such a seminal moment in women's sports history. I also played in the Big East, coached in the Big East. I like to tease Gino Auriemma that I never lost a game to him because he was so early in his UConn career, and we have a good time with it. But I feel very lucky to have watched that program develop under a man I believe, and more importantly, people like Jeff Van Gundy, Bobby Knight, and others have said this was one of the all-time great coaches to ever do it. So I've called many of their national championships. Diana Taurasi is one of my favorite players, so I saw, many of her titles. I'm incredibly thankful to have covered LeBron James's career. I mean, this man will go down as one of the all-time greats. I remember the vitriol he experienced when he left Cleveland, the battle he had to get to his first finals, the loss in the finals, and then having to come back and try it again. Like, people will say, who's your favorite NBA player? I'm like, they're all tremendous men. And it's a privilege to watch and to be there for all of it. But you're talking about one of the all-time greats, and I've had the chance to interview LeBron in a number of different settings.
Well, we'll wrap up your career, but there's just a couple more questions. You know, I know you travel a lot. I know you're on the road. Give me your favorite city and maybe some of your favorite foods or favorite restaurants on the road.
Yeah, so I don't know that I have a favorite city. I mean, listen, I was born in New York, raised on the Jersey Shore, so I grew up, you know, sort of in the metropolitan area. And I love New York City because it's alive at every time of the day and night. I love Salt Lake City. I think the people are incredibly kind. We stay at that extraordinary hotel, and I won't say it just in case my colleagues don't want people knowing which one we're at. It's beautiful. It's absolutely stunning landscape that you're in all the time. And frankly, I love Quinn Snyder. I mean, I name a city. I love Mexican food, so I love going to San Antonio. San Francisco is phenomenal. There's so much to do there. I mean, Miami, I lived in Miami. We stayed at the Mandarin Oriental Hotel. Life was very good in those moments. I mean, listen, if the ball is being tipped up, it doesn't matter where it is. I'll be there and be there with bells on. That's for sure.
Oh, I love it. I love it. Well, Salt Lake City is an amazing place. And yes, we have a beautiful landscape.
I will say this, though, George, you know, but it did give me great perspective for it because, you know, everybody talks about when you go to Denver and when you play in Salt Lake, you know, it takes you a couple minutes to get adjusted. I'm like, yeah, I get it now. Now, gentlemen, I'm going to be a little bit more lenient on y'all when you go to play the Jazz.
When we start out 0 for 7 in the first quarter, you're not going to be too tough on us.
Right.
Oh, that's funny. Well, Doris, last question here. You know, just a fun question. We've been quarantined for a long time. If you had to be quarantined with two interesting people, we're not going to say Drake because he has an obsession with you. So, you know, we already know enough about him. Who would they be and why? They could be past, or they could have passed away, or they could be living. You pick.
Oh boy. Okay. So I'm just going to tell you. So my daughter's not a sports fan at all, George, at all. She loves literature and she loves the theater, and she's an attorney. So when she was young, you know, I'm thinking, well, what do I do? And we fell into cooking as our, you know, we love food and we love great wine. And so we both, and she's a much better cook. It kills me to say that. But we have always talked about, we would love to meet the Barefoot Contessa and her husband, Jeffrey, because she's on the Food Network. She loves cocktails as much as we do. And she just makes the best, most intriguing food. And she's always so nice to her husband, Jeffrey, who I think is a professor at Yale. And we've always said, we've got to get on the Barefoot Contessa. We can cook with the Barefoot. So it might be the Barefoot because I know I eat and drink very well.
Oh, join the club. I can eat and drink very well. And it hasn't been helping me with our facility opening up.
I'll bet.
Well, Doris, thank you so much for joining us on the Drive and Dish podcast. Ladies and gentlemen, she is the GOAT. She's the best. And if I could give like air hugs, if we didn't have to stay 6 feet away from each other, I'd give you one right now, Doris.
I'm going to swim in your virtual hug. And thank you so much for being so kind and for visiting with me. It was awesome. And I really, really hope I see you at some point soon.